and things that are illegal
So
or
if
not.
it's
And so if
an
it's legal,
option,
all of a sudden something that has been bad is now good.
Yes.
No negative effect.
And there was actually a woman who, when she was 17 years old, she wanted physician-assisted suicide, but it was still illegal back then. And now she has lived 50 years past that, and now it is legal. But she says that she's so glad that it wasn't legal because she probably would have done it, and she would have had these 50 extra years to live.
There's a name that kind of, whenever I think of this subject for whatever reason, and maybe it was just because this was the most publicized name when I was growing up, back before 1997, which still wasn't that long ago, is Jack Kevorkian, and I think you can get the nickname Dr. Death.
Yeah.
Can you ladies tell me a little bit about Dr. Kevorkian, why he was in the news so much, how he did or didn't contribute to the onset of PAS?
Yeah, we researched him, and we thought he was kind of like Frankenstein.
Right.
Because he was like
So did we.
fascinated with death.
Right.
And it said he proposed that death row prison inmates be used as subjects of medical experiments. And he became famous in 1990 when he assisted the suicide of Janet Atkins, who was an Alzheimer's patient, and he made this like suicide machine. It was not.
It was so
It was like
cool.
scary.
Yeah.
And he assembled it even though his license was suspended, and he delivered carbon monoxide through a gas mask. And that kind of brought him to the news, and he was convicted and put in prison.
And he like did it through his van, which I think is really weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think if you have to do it like secretly and out of your van, then it's probably not a good thing you should be doing. Yeah. But that's just me.
So what's his status right now? Is he still in prison, Kenzie? Do we know?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. It says he spent 8 years in prison after a 1999 conviction. So
Do you know anything about his rationale? Like, did he ever come out and say why he was doing it?
He just loved the idea of like death. Like Mackenzie said, he like wanted to test like people on death row like with medical experiments that would end in death, and they like knew it too, and like that was his intention for it, and he was just like really interested in like, I don't know, helping people die, and I don't know, I think he was kind of insane.
a quote from him actually said, "But really, my number one reason was because it was interesting."
No compassion.
He is dead, by the way.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
He is dead, by the way.
Thank you, Google. I was going to draw some comparisons to what the Nazis did with their prisoners of war, and what Mrs. Cat is banned me from talking about World War II things. we won't go there. It's true. It's probably a good choice.
So say the patient makes this decision in one of these approved states with their physician, the physician provides them with the information and the medication. Does this occur in a medical setting, or is it up to the patient to where, is it totally patient control, like I'm gonna do this at home, or?
Yeah, for sure. They can choose to stay in the hospital and do it, but it's most often that they go home and have like their loved ones around. And
They dress
and
up. They put their favorite music.
and they have a medical person there too, just to like watch over most of the time. But
Yeah, like people try to make this as like peaceful of a death as possible. Like many people that are for physician-assisted suicide go through with it because they believe that it will be the most peaceful version of death, and that's why a lot of them decide to be at home, close to their loved ones.
And going on that, most of the time, the actual procedure has to be videotaped for legal reasons, just to say that either the medical person that's at home with them or their family didn't force the medication upon them.
Alan, I'm a little confused. I think when we started out this conversation, we said that physician-assisted suicide, the whole point of it was that the doctor was not present. They were prescribing medications and sending you home to go do what it is you choose to do with those medications. I'm not killing you. I'm just giving you the things if you so choose to do this, right?
Yes.
But now we're saying that there is a medical professional there. So is that not a conflict?
I
think it's mostly just in case, because there are scenarios where the medicine has not worked.
Correct.
Just like in the death penalty, yesterday we were talking about that, how sometimes it doesn't always work, and there has been cases of that. So in that case, I think that it's just sort of a precautionary thing in order to have a medical person there. I don't think it's actually the doctor who prescribed you the medicine, but it's more of just like either a nurse or a nurse practitioner or something like that, just to be there in case of an accident.
And they're also checking your pulse to like see like your time of death. They like check it because it varies like how quickly it kills you because
Based on
some
weight
people-
and-
well, yeah, some people like it like the average person it takes like about what is it, half an hour, and then but if you're like either really fit or really overweight, then it can take up to like 2 days to kill you.
Can you distinguish between physician-assisted suicide and do not resuscitate?
Yes, so do not resuscitate is an order in the patient's medical chart advising health professionals that extraordinary measures should not be used to attempt to save the life of a person. So it's more, I think of do not resuscitate as if someone has already died, and in that instance, they're giving them CPR to bring them back to life. Whereas physicians-assisted suicide, you are living and you're taking a drug to kill you.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference of you're already dead and someone's bringing you back to life, and you're alive and you're taking something to kill you.
What about other advanced directives that are out there? Do you find a moral distinction between those? Advanced directives meaning directions given to your healthcare provider for what should happen if you are not conscious and able to make decisions. For example, you can have something that would say, I don't want any extraordinary measures to be taken to save my life. I don't want you to give me any additional food or fluid. If I can't feed myself, do not give me intravenous liquids or foods or things like that. And that is, so for example, my grandmother recently passed away. She had one of those, she had a stroke. She was no longer able to swallow, but she had a advanced directive which said, do not feed me artificially. So she ended up starving to death. Do you consider that a form of physician-assisted suicide, or is there some kind of a distinction there?
I think that's tough, but in my personal opinion, I think that there's a difference of dying from natural causes and then dying from someone, you taking a drug. So I think that's where like the line kind of separates those two.
Yeah, I agree.
So Lily, you mentioned, you said something that I want to kind of come back to, that our culture is very my body, my choice right now, and there's a lot of discussion on what rights people have to what they do to their own bodies, and how that works. Would you consider physician-assisted suicide unconstitutional or constitutional? Like a right that you have? And it's not just for Lily and
I mean, I feel like, I mean, it is your body and your choice, and I guess you do have a right to do it. I just think morally, it's just not like acceptable.
I think we all agree on the fact that everybody has a right to do what they want, like just like God always gives us free will. We have a right to choose what we want to do, but that doesn't always mean that what we choose is going to be morally or ethically correct. So
I think like, I don't know, whether or not their physician like agrees to like assist their suicide, like if that doesn't happen, then they're gonna find another way to do it if they're really like, if they really want to end it. Like I feel like they're gonna do it some way or another. And like if they're dead, there's not a punishment really. I mean, I don't know what they would like do, you know.
And morally, we think suicide, like regular suicide, we all think it's bad, like morally. So I don't see like how a physician assisting that suicide is much better. I see it as one of the same.
The word right gets thrown around a whole lot. And when I recall from the Declaration of Independence, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't think death was included in there. In fact, life would seem to be the opposite of that. So do we really have a right to this? Is that a legal right or is that a moral right? Or do we not in any case? my only law question is law.
I think it's more of a legal right over a moral right because I don't think it's morally right at all, but would you?
Yeah, I think, like, life and liberty, like, you have the liberty to do what you want, and they can't take that away from you. But yeah, like Mackenzie said, morally, it's just.
You mentioned earlier about just society in general, particularly with certain generations just being, it's about me, it's my choice, it's my decision. How do you see this portrayed through different mediums, like you say movies or TV shows? Did you all do any research like with pop culture or any type of mediums that would show that this is acceptable or to feed into that trend of it being your decision, all about you?
I know that within the past month we talked a lot about worldviews in Bible, and postmodernism is kind of the worldview that we're in right now, and I think within that it's all about, it's my choice, this is my life, I'm allowed to believe what I want, and whatever I believe is morally right. So along with that, I think all mediums like TV, movies, social media, I think that a lot of it is portraying the fact that we are in a postmodernism worldview, and that means that you're allowed to choose what you want to do and what you believe is right, and there's just not anything wrong with that. So I think all TV shows, movies, social media, everything like that kind of portrays the fact that you're allowed to do what you feel is best for you.
I'd like you to take a step down the slippery slope. So as this becomes more accepted, more widely accepted in the public, what's the next step? After physician-assisted suicide, what can you reasonably see happening next in our society?
Do you mean like legally, like?
No, the next thing that comes along. So, for example, the Netherlands was the first country to legalize physician-assisted suicide many years ago. Can you see how that issue has progressed in that country in terms of how it's been used?
Yeah, so, like since what I mentioned earlier, that it's not only physical illness anymore, it's mental illness, and then because of this, new questions have risen from this, asking like how far is too far, because people are starting to request physician-assisted suicide for more and more like minor reasons.
Not only that, in the Netherlands also, the physician can actively be involved. Like the physician can be the one that puts the drug in your coffee.
Euthanasia.
Yes, so we get to where we start accepting that becomes acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And then what does that mean for those who are on the fringes of our society, the elderly, the disabled, those who are born with birth defects, things like that? How far is it before we get into eugenics?
I think going off of that, if we get to that point, I think that a lot of people who are seen as useless in our society, that's not the correct term or politically correct term, but that's, I don't know the best way that I can say it.
Not having
Yes.
as much value.
Yes, like the elderly or people with mental illness or things like that will be euthanized, perhaps, in the future if people see them as not being able to add anything to society.
Yeah, I feel like through this we're kind of like losing the value of life, and yeah, like Adam had said, it's just if we lose that mentality and like the fact that life is valuable and everyone was created, and I think if we start to lose that, then it can really have a big effect on what happens next, and I think it can lead down a very slippery slope, like really quickly too.
And to me, like the next step, I feel like would be everyone having access to the drugs. It doesn't have to be facilitated by the physician at all. I feel like the next step downward would be you can just go to the pharmacy and get the drug and take it yourself.
Mackenzie, if we have given you the ability to say, my life has no value anymore, I can end it. I think to Mrs. Eiler's point, the next step could be giving somebody else the ability to say, your life has no value anymore.
Yeah.
We can end it for you.
Yeah.
do we see that that could be
Scary.
something that could come quickly, right?
That's already kind of happening, like with euthanasia, or just like if somebody's in a coma or like brain dead, for example, they have other people that make that decision for them, like family members, or sometimes even the doctors will say they're not, like we can't do much else to like bring them back or keep them alive, and like I guess they kind of have to find where they draw the line, but they do make that decision for them since they can't. So.
That's defined as mercy killing, and people believe that. With that, that's the only compassionate thing to do for those people who can't decide for themselves. So that is more on the euthanasia side than physician-assisted suicide, because the person is not deciding for themselves. But
So you mentioned the Netherlands. Are there other places in the world that are supporting this, or are they looking at us going, what are these states doing? Like, how does the rest of the world view this topic?
I know it's pretty common in Europe. A bunch of countries over there, the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany. A lot of them are kind of, well, they have been. The Netherlands started it before we even did, so it's circulating there and just as much as it is here, I think.
And I know here you have to ask for it 3 times, but in Germany and places in Europe, you don't. Like you can go in and come out with that.
Well, no, you don't have to.
Well, yeah, don't.
Well played, Lily.
Yeah.
yeah, like we read about this one, I don't remember what it was called or where it was, but it was in Europe, and it was this one medical center where you didn't even have to be a resident there. Like you could be a tourist and you could go and get the drug, and yeah.
Let's talk about some more legal ramifications of this, and this is probably stretching the bounds of your research a little bit, but life insurance. You take out a life insurance policy on yourself, right? At the point of your death, that pays out some money to your beneficiaries, usually to your family members, your children, whatever. There's usually a rider in there that says, if you kill yourself, we're not paying the money out to your family because you facilitated it, right? If you commit suicide, we won't pay those benefits out. Do we know, have there been any adjustments in laws based on physician-assisted suicide? Because now you're not taking it into your own hands, somebody else is giving you the ability to do it. How that fits into the legal framework or something like that.
I do not know that.
I didn't research, but I'm guessing it's still suicide, so I don't know.
So your life insurance would be null and void at that point.
I don't know either, but I know with regarding insurance, health insurance doesn't pay for it. So like, it has to come out of your own pocket to pay for it.
That's
And it's
interesting.
expensive too.
Why wouldn't health insurance pay for it? Why do we think?
Because you're not alive.
Because if I'm a health insurance company, I'm a company, right? So I'm looking to make money, right? That's what keeps the doors open. And so oftentimes, health insurance companies will cover treatment for something. So like they may pay for me to get LASIK because it's more expensive for them to continue to pay for me to get glasses and contacts and those sorts of things. So it's in their financial interest for me to get LASIK done, so I don't have to buy glasses, I don't have to buy contacts, they want to pay for part of that. I would think that would probably carry over to something like this, right? If they're paying a small amount for me to have medication to end my life, especially if I have a terminal illness, where they're having to pay for chemotherapy or stem cell research, whatever, all of these different medications and drugs over the course of my lifetime, isn't it in their financial interest to pay for the drugs that would end my life that would save them money in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do much research on this.
I'm
but
just asking you
guessing-
logically, right?
Yeah, it makes sense that it would be in their best interest to do that.
Financially.
The only justification that I would have for them not paying for it is that all of those other things are considered as treatments.
Mhm.
And while this, I guess, is considered a treatment as well, but not really because it's ending your life. So it's not something that's going to help you continue to live or continue your life, help your life quality to be better. It's just ending your life. So that's the only reason that I could think of why they wouldn't, I guess, because all those other things are considered a treatment, and this is sort of just like.
But they're a business, they're cold, hard business, whatever, but they're saving money, right? I mean, they're paying one time for one medication. I'm ending my life, now they don't have to pay for all my medications and doctor visits moving forward, right? That lady who was 50 years, right, after she could have killed herself, I think Joanna had said. Now they're paying for all of her medical expenses for the next 50 years. If they had paid for the medication at the front end of this, they would have saved a lot of money, right?
Probably. I think so. I don't know, like, how much they actually would have had to pay or how much they would pay like over an amount of like